Have you ever noticed that the most serious people you know rarely seem truly happy, that those who live with furrowed eyebrows carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders are precisely those who seem furthest from the lightness of life? There is something deeply ironic about this. After all, who said that life should be taken so seriously? Who decreed that we have to treat it like a military mission, a rigid sequence of duties and obligations, as if we were all in some kind of cosmic test with grades at the end? Perhaps the greatest trick in existence is this, making you believe you are playing a game you can't lose, when in fact there have never been fixed rules, no referees, no trophies at the end. Just the dancing, just the flow, just the music of existence, waiting for you to get into the groove. But instead, you sit in the corner of the room, noting every step of the other dancers, judging whether you are doing it right. The question is, right for whom? From a young age, we are trained to be serious. We are taught that playing is for children, that laughing too much is a waste of time, that we need to be productive, useful, responsible, mature. But look how curious it is: the more we try to be adults, the more we move away from the wisdom we had when we were children. In our rush to grow up, we left behind the only thing we knew how to truly live on: our playful spirit. Alan Watts used to say that the meaning of life is much more like a song than a journey. When you listen to a song, you don't rush to the end of the song. You don't look forward to hearing the last note right away. The pleasure is in playing, in dancing with each chord, in feeling the flow of the melody. But look what we do with our lives. We treat each moment as a means to get somewhere. As children, we want to grow up. As teenagers, we want freedom. As adults, we want stability. When we are old, we want time. And when we finally look back, we realize that we've been running from one point to another without ever actually hearing the music. Not taking life too seriously is not an invitation to irresponsibility. It is a call to conscience, a reminder that the weight we carry is often imaginary. The anxiety about tomorrow, the guilt about yesterday, the constant need to prove something, all of this is theater, a mind game, an act that we forget is an act. And the more we lose ourselves in this role, the further we move away from the spontaneity that makes life worth living. Take trees, for example. They are not trying to be anything other than what they already are. There is no pine tree with an existential crisis wanting to become a palm tree. There is no rose wondering if it smells good enough. But we humans carry this strange ability to feel insufficient even when we are complete, perhaps because we have believed the most dangerous lie of all, that life is a problem to be solved. But life is not a problem. Life is a mystery, and mysteries can't be solved. They contemplate themselves. If they breathe, they dance. And it is precisely when we start to take everything less seriously, including ourselves, that this mystery begins to reveal itself. Laughing at yourself is one of the highest forms of wisdom, because those who laugh at themselves don't take themselves so seriously, and those who don't take themselves so seriously are free. Free from masks, characters, the need to impress. And freedom deep down is this being able to be without the constant need to justify your existence. Continues. Have you ever noticed how the most unforgettable moments of your life were probably unplanned? They arrived like a sudden breeze, without effort, without an agenda. An unexpected smile, a sunset that stopped time, a deep conversation at 3 in the morning. None of these moments required you to be serious, tense, worried. On the contrary, they emerged when you were surrendered, released, available for the now. And interestingly, that's exactly what seriousness robs us of, the now. Being serious all the time is being trapped in a future that never arrives. It's living according to goals, milestones, and achievements, as if existence were an infinite ladder that never leads anywhere. But if everything you do has a purpose that is always beyond the present moment, then you are never really here, And if you're never here, how can you truly live? A serious mind is a mind that is always trying to control. Control what will happen, what others think, what you feel. But life cannot be controlled. It can be surfing like a wave that rises and breaks. You can learn to move with it, or you can fight until you drown. The lightness that comes when you stop fighting is like a portal. Suddenly you realize that the game of life does not require a winner. It just requires you to participate. Not with rigidity, but with dedication. Alan Watts often spoke about the concept of divine play. The idea that God, or consciousness, or the universe, is playing hide and seek, pretending to be you, pretending to be this world, pretending to be lost, only to remember in the end that you always knew. What if this is true? What if this whole journey, with its dramas, its ups and downs, its victories and defeats, is just a play, a cosmic theater where the most important thing is not the story, but the performance itself? Taking life more lightly also means recognizing that we are all actors, improvising on a stage without a script. And it's when we laugh at the script, forget the lines, and start improvising, that something magical happens. We become authentic. We become real. And there's nothing more liberating than stopping acting all the time. Lightness is the wisdom of those who understand that life is transitory. And instead of fearing this transience, celebrate it, precisely because it is fleeting, it is precious. The flower that withers, the summer that ends, the moment that passes, these are all reminders that now is all we have. So why waste it by being so serious? There is an almost spiritual quality to laughter. When you laugh at yourself, at your fears, at your neuroses, you are in a way transcendently aware. You're telling the universe, I get it. I know this is all a game, and I'm willing to play. It's not about denying the pain, but about not holding on to it, of not making it your identity. Suffering is part of it, yes, but it is not everything. Lightness does not negate depth. It makes it bearable. The world doesn't need more serious people. You need more awakened human beings. And awakening is not a solemn act, it is a celebration. A cosmic laugh at the vastness of the mystery. Awakening is dancing, even without knowing all the steps. It's really singing out of tune. It's living as if existence were a poem written with each breath. And that's where the magic happens. When you begin to live like you dance instead of march, the universe seems to change the way it responds to you. The colors become more vivid. The most meaningful conversations, the most synchronous encounters. Not because the world has changed, but because you have changed the way you look at it. When you let go of the controller, the world stops being a battlefield and turns into an amusement park. And then you realize that you are not here to win, but to play. But of course, the serious mind will resist. She will say, but what about the bills? What about the commitments? What about the responsibilities? And the answer is simple. All of this exists, yes, but none of it requires you to suffer. You can pay your bills with a smile. You can be responsible without becoming rigid. You can fulfill your commitments with ease, because lightness is not the absence of action. It is the absence of weight. It's when you act without the burden of constant worry, without the fear of making mistakes, without the obsession with control. And it's curious how, when we stop trying to control everything, things start to flow better. When we stop taking life so seriously, relationships become more real because we stop acting. Projects become more creative because we make room for intuition. Pain becomes more bearable because we stop resisting. And it is in this space of acceptance, of non-resistance, that true transformation happens. Have you ever noticed that the most intensely happy moments in your life were those in which you were fully present, without thinking about the future, without carrying the past? This presence is only possible when the mind stops taking everything so seriously, when she relaxes, when you realize that life is not a problem to be solved, but an experience to be lived, an everyday miracle disguised as routine. And perhaps this is why true wisdom often seems insane in the eyes of the world. Because he who awakens, who sees beyond seriousness, begins to act differently. He laughs at inappropriate moments. He cries with gratitude for no apparent reason. He dances alone in the middle of the room. He lives as if he knows a secret that the rest of the world has, not yet discovered. And indeed he knows. He knows that life doesn't need to be understood. It needs to be felt. There's something deeply freeing about knowing that you don't have to try so hard to be accepted, that you don't need to prove yourself all the time, that you can just be imperfect, be contradictory, human being, because in the end all this effort to be serious is a desperate attempt to be something we already are worthy of existing, worthy of making mistakes, worthy of laughter. So the next time life seems too hard, look to the sky. Look at a child playing, listen to music that makes you dance, and remember you are on a cosmic stage, and the play is a comedy that is sometimes tragic, sometimes sublime, but always full of surprises. And you, my friend, have the main role. But don't worry about memorizing it. Improvise, laugh, play, and above all, don't take life too seriously. Because in the end, perhaps the great secret is not finding the meaning of life, but simply living so fully, so lightly, so passionately present, that the meaning, if it exists, cannot help but reveal itself. The problem is that we grow up surrounded by voices that tell us that life is a race, that we need to achieve something, conquer, leave a legacy, that there is a goal, a finish line, and that only then, after a lot of sweat and sacrifice, will we finally be someone. But what if this is all just an illusion? What if there is no finish line at all? What if life is not about achieving, but about being? Not about arriving, but about flowing. This idea seems absurd to a mind used to calculating, measuring, controlling. But look at nature. It's not trying to be efficient. She's simply being. The tree does not rush to bear fruit. The river does not force its passage. Everything happens in its own time, with its own cadence. And yet we, the only beings who consider themselves superior for thinking, are the ones who suffer the most. Because we think too much. We plan too much. We control too much. And in the midst of doing so much, we forget to be. Alan Watts said that we take life so seriously that we become incapable of surrendering to the moment. The serious mind wants security, wants guarantees, wants everything to make sense all the time. But existence offers no guarantees. It is by nature fluid, chaotic, unpredictable. And only when we accept this impermanence do we begin to relax. Not as someone who gives up, but as someone who finally understands that they were swimming against the current. That all this tension, this rigidity, this control was never necessary. There is a quiet beauty in letting go, in allowing yourself to fail, to laugh at yourself, not because you devalue yourself, but because you understand that life does not demand perfection, but presence. It does not require constant effort, but conscious surrender. And you see, surrender here is not giving up. It's trust. It's knowing that when you let go of the reins, you don't lose control. You just stop resisting what is. This is the real dance. Not the one where you try to choreograph each step, but the one that happens when you close your eyes and let your body move on its own, guided by the invisible music that plays inside everything. This song, which few listen to because they are too busy being serious, is always there, whispering, calling, inviting you to play, to smile, to love without guarantees. And it's when you hear that call and respond not with a plan, but with a smile, that something opens, a clarity, a peace, a state of being where everything is exactly as it should be. But this takes courage, courage to abandon the armor of seriousness, courage to be vulnerable, to laugh out loud, to say, "I don't know," without shame. Courage to admit that life doesn't need to be taken so seriously to be deeply meaningful. In fact, perhaps it only finds its true depth when we treat it lightly. How many times have you found yourself ruminating over a problem stuck in a mental spiral only to realize later that the solution came the moment you stopped thinking, "This is no coincidence"? The relaxed mind sees more clearly. The light heart feels more intensely. The being who does not take himself so seriously is closer to the wisdom of the universe than the one who becomes rigid in ego and fear. That's why the masters, the enlightened, the wise, they all have something in common: an easy laugh, a sparkle in the eyes, a simplicity that confuses the intellect but soothes the soul, because they know there is no manual, there is no single path, and that often the greatest gesture of wisdom is simply to sit under a tree, watch the wind, and smile with eternity. Not taking life so seriously is therefore a revolution, a rebellion against conditioning, a refusal to live like a machine for producing, pleasing, accumulating. It's saying, "I choose to live." And to truly live is to risk being spontaneous. It's allowing yourself to feel without needing to understand everything. It's embracing chaos without wanting to fix it. It's finding meaning not in answers, but in presence, in this very moment now. It is in this now, right here, where no narrative is being written and no goal is being pursued, that life pulses with its most honest intensity. But few remain here. Most escape. You run to the past trying to correct what is already gone, or you project yourself into the future trying to predict what you can never control. And in this constant escape, the most sacred thing is lost: the present moment. This moment that cannot be repeated, that cannot be explained, that can only be lived. When you abandon seriousness, you return to it. You go back home. And this home is not a physical place, but an internal state. A state where you no longer need to justify yourself, where you allow yourself to be contradictory, imperfect, whole. Where you realize that all the social masks, the role of exemplary son, successful professional upright citizen, are just games. Games that you can play, yes, but without forgetting that they are games. And when you remember that something changes, you stop being the character and return to being the player. How many people live their entire lives without ever realizing it? They wake up early, work hard, follow all the rules, and yet they feel empty. Because seriousness consumed them, because they confused duty with purpose, because they forgot that the meaning of life is not in what you do, but in how you live. And the how, my friend, is where the key to everything lies. The how transforms the ordinary into extraordinary. The how reveals the sacred in the simple. The how is the silent dance between doing and being. And when you let this dance happen, when you allow laughter to enter the cracks in your everyday life, you heal. Not from pain, because pain is part of it, but from the unnecessary suffering that comes from resistance. You begin to see life as a master prankster, a trickster who puts you in absurd situations just to see if you can laugh at them. And when you laugh, when you let go, when you flow, oh yes, you align yourself with the very essence of the cosmos. Taking life less seriously is also an act of humility. It's recognizing that you don't know everything, that you don't have control, that you don't need to pretend, that you have all the answers. It's putting down the ego's weapons. It's making room for mystery, for the unexpected, for the unlikely. Because sometimes it's precisely what doesn't make sense that transforms everything. That date you almost cancelled, the idea that came out of nowhere, the impulsive choice that defied logic but got you exactly where you needed to be. These are the gifts of lightness, gifts that only come to those who are willing to put aside the script. The world will try to convince you otherwise. It will insist that you are serious, that you are productive, that you fit in. He will mock those who dance in the middle of the street, those who laugh without reason, those who live with an open heart. But pay attention, it is precisely these souls who light the path of others. They are the ones that remind us of something that logic cannot explain, but that the spirit recognizes immediately. Something like a longing for what we never were, but could always be. And the most beautiful thing of all is that this lightness does not need to be built. It is already in you, hidden beneath layers of obligation, fear, and self-demand. She is your nature. You came into the world with her. It was evident when you were a child, when you ran for no reason, laughed without a filter, asked everything without fear of looking stupid. That purity was not lost. It was just forgotten. But it can be remembered, and all it takes is a moment, a breath of consciousness for it to return to the surface. A moment when you decide to stop running, stop pleasing, stop fighting the tide. A moment when you take a deep breath, look around and say to yourself, I choose to live lighter, I choose to dance. And when you make that choice, that simple yet revolutionary choice to dance instead of march, you begin to realize something curious. Life responds differently. It's as if the universe itself was waiting for you to drop the armor. That you said yes to the unexpected yes, to the ridiculous yes, to the now. Because when you relax, life breathes with you, and then everything takes on another texture. People seem more human. Time seems kinder. Silence stops being empty and becomes full of presence. And it is in this state of light and awakened presence that true love is born. Not the love that demands, that holds, that counts, but the love that accepts, that flows, that observes without wanting to change. This love does not arise from effort, but from delivery. It is a natural expression of someone who has allowed themselves to lose weight. Because only a light heart can fly to another. Only an unarmed soul can truly connect. And only those who are not trying to prove themselves are capable of simply being with others, with the world, with themselves. Maybe that's why Alan Watts was so misunderstood by some people, because he dared to laugh at what everyone took seriously. I dared to say that spirituality is not in the rigidity of dogmas, but in the lightness of the gaze. That the sacred does not just live in temples, but in the little things that we ignore, in the steam that comes out of the cup of tea, in the sound of rain hitting the window, in the involuntary smile of those who remember for a second that they are alive. And deep down, maybe everything we are looking for, meaning peace, plenitude, is not in another place or in another time, but right here, where we are now, when we stop taking everything so seriously. When we relax our body, we let go of our shoulders and we let life lead us with its own music. And the music, oh, it's always playing, even when we don't listen, even when we are distracted trying to prove something to someone or to ourselves, even when we are caught up in the seriousness of I must, I need, I can't. But the music doesn't judge. She waits, she continues, soft, patient, mysterious, and she always invites just one gesture, a laugh, a sigh, a subtle abandonment of rigidity, an honest look in the mirror with the willingness to laugh at your own tragedy. And at that moment the door opens, because laughing at life is a form of prayer, one of the deepest, a silent recognition that all of this is transitory and therefore precious. And then, perhaps for the first time, you allow yourself. You allow yourself to truly live. Allow yourself to make mistakes, love fall, get up, and above all play. Because play is what remains when fear is gone. This is what comes when control gives way. It is what reveals the essence of the human soul, not a machine for producing and winning, but a being that dances, that feels, that laughs, that cries, that breathes, and that by an inexplicable miracle is here. Yes, here, now, not later, not when everything is resolved, not when you're perfect, but right now as you hear these words, as the world spins, as your heart beats. This moment will not happen again, and he is telling you silently, don't take life so seriously. You didn't come here to be a statue. came to be a fire, a dance, a breath, and perhaps at the end of it all, the greatest wisdom is just this: having lived lightly, having loved without strings attached, having danced without knowing the steps, having let life in all its uncertainty be your teacher, and when it's time to leave, because that moment will also come, may you close your eyes with a smile. A smile not from someone who understood everything, but from someone who knew how to live without needing to understand. And that yes is freedom. And this freedom is not something that can be achieved at the end of the road. It is not a trophy given to those who tried hard enough or followed all the rules correctly. No, this freedom is available now at this moment. For those who dare to strip themselves of seriousness, for those who have the courage to stop trying to be someone and simply be. Being what you are with everything that this entails, lights and shadows, certainties and doubts, laughter and tears. Being without needing to justify existence. And there is a unique beauty in this kind of existence, a beauty that cannot be explained, it can only be felt. Like that feeling of entering the sea for the first time in a long time, or lying on the grass and smelling the living earth, or looking into someone's eyes and not needing to say anything. Life in these moments does not demand meaning. She is the meaning, pure, whole, effortless, and all you have to do is allow it. Allow yourself to slow down. Allow yourself not to know. Allow yourself to laugh at yourself, at the plans that didn't work out, at the fears that seemed so big, at the dreams that changed shape. Because laughing at all of this is a sign that you understand. He understood that it's not about winning, but about being present. It's not about being right, but about being at peace. It's not about conquering, but about realizing that nothing was lost to begin with. And this perception does not come from the mind. It comes from silence, of the stillness that comes when you stop trying to understand everything. When you let go of the questions, the searches, the whys, when you just watch, listen, sit down, and then in that empty space, in that gap between one thought and another, you find the answer you were looking for. Not a verbal response, but a silent certainty. The certainty that you are exactly where you should be, that everything is as it should be. This does not mean that the pain disappears, even if the challenges disappear. But you stop resisting them. Stop making pain an enemy, error, a failure, doubt, a threat. You learn to walk with all this at your side without carrying the weight on your shoulders. And suddenly, life becomes lighter. Again, not because everything got easier, but because you became lighter, because the look has changed, because you stopped taking yourself so seriously. And that is the invitation. Not a call to abandon everything and flee to the mountains, but to live right here where you are with another perspective, with less rigidity and more waste play, with less self-demand and more self-compassion, with fewer fixed plans and more openness to the unexpected, because it is in the unexpected that the soul breathes. It is in the unplanned that the miracle happens. Alan Watts knew this, and that's why his words still resonate decades later, because he was pointing out the obvious, that we have forgotten that life is now, that the self is an illusion, that the universe dances, and that we were invited to dance along. But we forget, we become too serious, too busy, too important, and the dance awaits. But it's never too late. It's never too late to laugh again, to let the body soften, to look at the world through the eyes of a child. It's never too late to realize that what you were looking for in gold, status, titles, recognition, was all along hidden in the simplicity of a moment lived authentically. It's never too late to go home, not the one made of bricks, but the one made of presence, the one made of acceptance, the one made of lightness. And when you finally return to that state, even for a brief moment, everything changes. The world remains the same, but your experience of it changes, because you're back to being who you always were before you learned to be serious. It was back to flow. It was laughter again. It's back to that now. And in that silent return, without fanfare, without announcement, something inside you dissolves. Something old, rigid, that was always squeezing the chest. The idea that you needed to be someone special to prove something, to reach an ultimate destination. All of this melts away like ice under the sun. And in place of this heavy structure, there is space left. A large, fresh, light space. A space where life can finally breathe through you without the armor of ego, without the filters of expectation. And it is in this space that the purest laughter lives. Not the one that comes from a joke, but the laughter that comes as an existential relief. The laughter of someone who realizes that everything they took so seriously, their identity, their past, their failures, the opinions of others, were nothing more than dust dancing in the light. This laughter is a sigh of the soul. It is the echo of an awakening, a sign that you are starting to see things as they really are, impermanent, unpredictable, and therefore absolutely beautiful. Because the beauty of life lies precisely in what cannot be controlled. The sky doesn't need your permission to change color. The sea doesn't consult its agenda before rising. Flowers don't ask for approval to bloom. They simply go at their own pace. And this rhythm, this silent dance of the universe is in you too. It's in your heart beating without you asking. It's in the breath that comes and goes effortlessly. It's in the intuition that whispers while the mind screams. When you relax, you start to hear this melody. You begin to feel that there is an intelligence, greater than your logic, deeper than your reason, guiding everything with silent wisdom. And all she asks of you is that you trust. Don't take everything so seriously. Play more, let him watch more. May you feel more, because in the end, the depth of life is not found in weight, but in lightness, not in effort, but in delivery. Imagine for a moment if you lived each day as if it were a dance, not in the romantic sense, but in the sense of movement, expression, freedom. Imagine if your every gesture was a conscious step, if each word were a note in the music of the moment, if you walked the streets with the lightness of someone who isn't trying to get anywhere but just enjoying the journey. Imagine if you looked at people as if you recognized dancers in the same routine instead of enemies or competitors. The world would transform, or rather, you would transform. And with that, your perception of the world. That's the real miracle, when it's not the world that changes, but you. When you change your look from seriousness to curiosity. When you abandon the weight of personal importance and go back to playing with life like meeting an old friend. And this joke is not superficial. She is sacred, because in it resides the soul of the universe, the mystery of creation, the pulse of eternity. You don't need to understand everything to live well. In fact, the more you try to understand, the further you move away from essential simplicity. The mind that constantly searches for answers is the same one that builds prisons of fear and anxiety. But the mind that observes, that contemplates, that dances with uncertainty, that one knows true peace, because she's not trying to solve the mystery of life. You are simply allowing the mystery to envelop you. And by living like this, more lightly and less seriously, you don't become irresponsible. You become awakened. You become present. You become real. And what is more responsible than living authentically connected and consciously? So if there's one thing you can start doing right now, it's take a deep breath and let go. Release the chest. Release the control. Let go of the need to have everything resolved, and smile. A smile for no reason. A smile of someone who understands even without words that everything is okay. That this is all a game, a spectacle, a dance. And that you are here to play. And by playing, you come back to the center of yourself. Not that center invented by society where you must be productive, efficient, respectable, and competitive. But the living, pulsing, mysterious, and light center from which you came. That place where there is no judgment, no comparison, no demands, just the presence, the being, the now. And then in that center you realize that everything you sought out there peace, freedom, love, belonging, was never separate from you. It was just hidden behind the seriousness with which you treated everything. Like a thick curtain that prevents light from entering, seriousness covers the soul with shadows of urgency, of obligation, of fear. But the light is always there. And when you laugh, when you joke, when you stop taking yourself so seriously, the curtain tears and the light comes in. Just like that. Not taking life so seriously is one of the most courageous and spiritually mature acts anyone can do, because it takes courage to let go, to trust, to live with an open heart even though you know it can be broken. It takes courage to dance when everyone is marching, to laugh when everything seems to fall apart, to stay light when the world insists on making you heavy. But this lightness is not fragility, it's pure strength. The silent strength of those who chose the wisdom of water instead of the rigidity of stone. From those who chose to flow instead of resist. From someone who knows that life, despite all its pain, is a gift. And the best way to honor this gift is to live it lightly with presence and with gratitude. So the next time life seems too serious, take a moment, breathe, remember the absurdity of it all. Remember, we are spinning on a planet suspended in nothingness, surrounded by stars with no instruction manual. And yet, here we are, feeling living, making mistakes, loving learning. And if that's not enough reason to laugh, then maybe we're taking it all too seriously. Don't take life so seriously. Laugh more, hug more, release more, and above all, live like someone who knows that dance is more important than destiny. And if this video touched your heart in some way, if it provoked reflection, a smile or relief in you, remember to leave a like, share with someone who is also in need of lightness, and subscribe to the channel to continue exploring the wonders and mysteries of existence with me. Activate the bell so you don't miss the next philosophical dives. And of course, comment below what have you been taking too seriously in your life. Until the next video. And remember, life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be danced.